My fiancé said, "My brother gets half your company." I said, "Then there won't be a wedding." She thought saying it in front of both families would corner me into obeying. Instead, I canceled the venue, changed the locks, and sent her family a bill for every lie that came after. Original post: I'm Owen, 34, from Charlotte, North Carolina. I own a commercial landscaping company. Every truck, mower, account, and line of credit in that business had my name on it and my risk behind it. My fiancée, Brianna, was 31, an event stylist. We'd been together a little over 3 years, engaged for 9 months, and 6 weeks away from getting married. The relationship started wobbling right when my company stopped struggling. Back when I was grinding through 6-day weeks and borrowing from family to cover payroll, Brianna talked about us like a team. Once I landed a city contract, bought a second truck, and moved into a better house, the language changed. It stopped being our future. It became what she deserved. At first, it was little stuff. She'd joke that after the wedding she was retiring from stress. She said my sister, Callie, needed to understand her place once Brianna became my wife. She kept asking why my office manager, Denise, still had access to the books, because wives should know everything before employees do. I minimized. I explained it away. I told myself wedding pressure makes people weird. Then came the family dinner. My parents hosted both families on a Sunday to go over wedding week logistics, seating chart, rehearsal dinner, hotel blocks, normal stuff. It stopped being normal when Brianna's brother, Chase, started talking like he already worked for me. He was 28, between jobs in the same way some people are between workouts for 7 years. He tapped his beer bottle on the kitchen island and said, "So after the honeymoon, when do I come in and learn the ropes?" Brianna says, "You're putting me on operations." I looked at him. Then at Brianna. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed that I was. I said, "That's not happening." She laughed once. "Babe, we talked about this." "No," I said. "You talked." I said, "Absolutely not." The room got quiet. Brianna set down her wine glass and said, "We're about to be married. My family should benefit too. Chase needs stability." I said, "He has 0 experience. Also, this is my company, not a wedding favor." Then she said the line that ended everything. "After the wedding, my brother gets half your company. If you loved me, you'd want my family protected." Verbatim, no hesitation, just a clean ultimatum in front of both families, like she thought saying it publicly would make it true. I looked at Brianna for maybe 4 seconds. Then I said, "Then there won't be a wedding." You could feel the oxygen leave the room. She blinked hard and said, "Don't embarrass me, Owen." I stood up, opened my notes app, and started canceling things in front of her. Planner first, then venue, then caterer, then florist. Every major contract was under my name, and I made that clear in writing while still standing in my parents' dining room. Brianna said, "Are you insane?" I said, "No, I'm the groom canceling his own mistake." Then I walked upstairs, got the document folder from my overnight bag, came back down and put it on the table. Venue deposit, mine. Catering retainer, mine. House deed, mine. Business registration, mine. The prenup draft my attorney had sent 2 months earlier, the one Brianna kept avoiding because it felt cold, also mine. I slid the prenup packet toward her and said, "Since everybody's discussing what your family gets, here's what the legal version said they were getting." Nothing. Chase stood up first and said I'd been planning to screw his sister. I said, "No, I've been planning not to get robbed politely." Brianna started shouting then, saying I was humiliating her, saying I owed her for standing by me when the company was small. That part actually made me laugh, because I remember borrowing $8,000 from my uncle to cover payroll while Brianna was in Miami on a girls' trip posting about manifesting softness. I said, "You don't get equity for attendance." Then I told her she had until Tuesday at 6 p.m. to remove what belonged to her from my house. Callie would be there, and I'd document everything. After that, the locks were changing. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You'd throw your fiancé out over one conversation." I said no. over what that conversation revealed. Once the house was empty, I called my attorney, Seth. He told me 3 things. Cancel every vendor in writing. Change all passwords tonight. Do not let her touch anything related to the company. By midnight, Brianna had called 19 times and texted 26. First anger, then pleading, then revisionist history, then threats. You know I didn't mean it like that. You owe me for the time I gave you. If you ruin this for me, I'll ruin something for you. That last one got screenshotted and sent straight to Seth. Tuesday, she showed up at 440 with her friend Talia and 6 empty bins. Callie was already at my kitchen counter with a clipboard because my sister loves me in deeply administrative ways. Brianna walked in wearing sunglasses indoors and said, "I hope you're happy." I said, "Happier than I was Sunday." She spent the next hour packing in stages, first cold, then shaky, then angry again. Every room came with a speech. Callie kept writing item descriptions and bin counts without looking up. At one point, Brianna stood in the hallway and said, "You think you win because you canceled a wedding. You just made an enemy." I said, "Then be one somewhere else." Before she left, she reached for my spare business keys on the entry table. I said, "Leave those." She said I was practically your wife. I said, "Practically isn't a legal category." On her way out, Brianna said, "Enjoy your business. Let's see who's left when people hear what you did to me." I said, "I'm counting on the truth traveling faster than you do. That should have been the end. It was not." The quiet after that first week told me more than the relationship ever had. No tension in my own kitchen. No strategic arguments right before bed. No little jokes about how marriage would fix ownership. Just silence, coffee, work, and the strange relief of realizing peace is not the same thing as loneliness. Update 1: The first act of revenge came 48 hours later. One of my commercial clients called to ask why I'd be taking some time away for mental health and whether his account was being reassigned. He forwarded me an email from a Gmail account pretending to be Denise. It said I was going through a personal crisis after an unexpected breakup episode and that urgent needs should be redirected elsewhere. It was sloppily written, wrong signature, wrong number. But it was good enough to create confusion, and it had Brianna all over it. I forwarded it to Seth, Denise, and my IT guy. We locked down company email protocols, warned major clients directly, and had the fake account reported before noon. At 1:15, Brianna texted me from a new number. "Maybe now you'll learn what it feels like to be blindsided." There it was. A confession dressed like poetry. She posted a black and white selfie with the caption, "Sometimes the man you build with chooses money over love." The comments went full disaster choir. There was, notably, no have to take, because there had not been a wedding. Because there had been a prenup draft. Because the business existed before Brianna and would continue after the smoke cleared. Still, noise matters if you leave it unanswered too long. So I emailed family and the small circle of close wedding guests. 4 sentences, no adjectives. The wedding was canceled after Brianna publicly demanded ownership access to my company for her brother as a condition of marriage. There will be no further discussion from my side. Vendor questions can be directed to me because all contracts were under my name. I wish her well. That was it. Once people heard the actual reason, support shifted fast. Most surprising was Brianna's father. He called Saturday morning and asked one question: did Chase's name really come up? I said in front of everyone. He exhaled and said, "All right, that's all I needed." Unexpected ally. Meanwhile, Brianna kept escalating. She sent a Venmo request for $18,500 labeled compensation for emotional damages plus wedding labor. Declined. She posted about escaping financial abuse. Ignored. She had Talia call Denise pretending to be a potential bride just to fish for gossip. Denise said, "Honey, if you're fishing, use better bait," and hung up. Then Brianna showed up at the house. Ring camera caught her at 6:07 a.m. on a Monday, wearing one of my old hoodies and holding a bakery bag like croissants could undo extortion. She knocked, waited, sat on the porch swing, then slipped a note under the mat. The note said, "Real men fight for their women, not their wallet." I threw it away. That afternoon, Seth sent a cease and desist. No more contact, no more interference with company operations. No more false statements to clients. No more appearances at my home. For about 3 days, there was peace. Then Chase wanted his own scene. He showed up at one of my commercial sites in Matthews and demanded to talk like men. I was in the parking lot checking irrigation plans when he walked up. He said, "You ruined my sister's life." I said, "Your sister tried to assign you a management job in a company you couldn't identify on a tax return." He stepped closer and put a hand on my shoulder. Bad choice. One of my crew leads, Marcus, had already been told to record any family-related weirdness after the fake email stunt. He started filming immediately. I stepped back and said, "Take your hand off me and leave." He did, but not before saying, "We can make your business hurt." That line made the footage. Update 2-3 weeks after the canceled wedding, Brianna shifted from public sympathy to direct sabotage. That was where she overplayed it. First, someone filed a complaint with the city alleging my company was disposing of chemicals illegally at 2 municipal properties. Serious accusation, serious enough that an inspector showed up. Fortunately, we are boring in all the best ways. Logs clean. Disposal receipts clean. Crew certifications current. Inspection closed the same day with no findings. Then Denise got a voicemail from a disguised voice saying the city should look harder because my company wasn't as clean as it seemed. Also amateur. Also traceable. Seth had already looped in a private investigator. Within a week, we had enough to make a very educated connection between the fake email, the complaint timing, and a prepaid phone purchased with Talia standing beside Brianna at a pharmacy in Pineville. While that was happening, Brianna kept trying to reach me through side doors. My cousin, my mother, even Callie. My mother handled her with church lady politeness. She told Brianna, "You confused access with love, and now you're upset the door is locked." The real turning point came at my office. On a Thursday around noon, Brianna walked into reception wearing a cream dress and carrying a garment bag. She told the receptionist she was there to return my tux and discuss vendor refunds. I had no tux there, no reason to see her. Denise called me before letting her pass the lobby. I said, "Don't let her back." Brianna must have heard enough because she started crying loud enough for the whole front office to hear. Then she unzipped the garment bag and held up her wedding dress in my lobby like she was presenting evidence to a jury no one had asked for. She said, "Is this what you wanted? For everyone to see what you did?" Reception went dead quiet. I walked out because sometimes you have to face the circus long enough to end the show. I stopped about 10 feet away and said, "Brianna, leave." She shook the dress once and said, "You took everything from me." I said, "No, I canceled a wedding." "You tried to take a business." She said, "People don't know what kind of man you are." I said, "They do now." Then I looked at Denise and said, "Call security." That sentence broke whatever fantasy scene she was trying to stage. She dropped the dress bag, started yelling that I was heartless, then pointed at my staff and called them fraud protectors. Security walked her out. And because the universe occasionally likes me, one of the people in reception that day was a property manager from an HOA contract we'd been pitching for months. He emailed later and wrote, "For what it's worth, anyone who can stay that calm with that level of nonsense can probably handle our board." We landed the account 10 days later. That night, Seth stopped advising restraint and started advising action. We filed for a temporary restraining order based on harassment, business interference, false complaints, and the threat footage from Chase. Then Brianna committed one more act of astonishing stupidity. She mailed copies of our engagement photos to 3 of my biggest clients with a note that said, "Ask him what kind of husband he was going to be." One client called laughing. One called confused. One sent the envelope straight to Seth because she said, "I assume this is legal bait, and I don't touch bait." The hearing was set for the following Wednesday. Final update: court is a terrible place to cosplay innocence when the other side brought timelines. Brianna arrived in navy minimal makeup, hair pulled back, carrying a Bible she never opened. Chase came too. Talia was there as well, suddenly allergic to eye contact. Seth had a binder thick enough to stop a door. He organized it by category. Canceled vendor emails, threat texts, the fake client email, the city complaint timeline, the porch video, the site confrontation footage, the lobby incident, client mailers. He even included the Venmo request for emotional damages because, in his words, judges deserve a laugh too. Brianna's attorney tried the usual route first. Wedding stress, misunderstandings, a family conflict that spiraled. Then Seth stood up and said, "This is not a heartbreak case. This is retaliation for a failed attempt to obtain business access and leverage marriage for economic gain." The judge asked Brianna directly whether she had demanded that her brother be given a role or interest in my company after marriage. Her attorney started to object. The judge stopped him. Brianna said, "I was talking about family security." The judge said, "Did you say it or not?" Silence. Then, "I may have said something like that." Seth handed over statements from 5 people who heard the exact line, including Brianna's own father, because yes, her father had submitted an affidavit. Short, brutal, accurate. "I heard my daughter state that Chase would get part of Owen's company after the wedding. Owen immediately canceled the wedding. That is consistent with my memory." Then came the business interference evidence. The fake email, the complaint, the mailed photos, the office incident, the site video of Chase saying, "We can make your business hurt." Chase tried to explain that line by saying he meant emotionally. The judge said, "That is not better." Brianna cried then. Real tears, I think. At one point she said, "I gave him 3 years of my life." The judge replied, "That does not entitle you to his company." The order was granted for 18 months. No direct contact. No third-party contact except through counsel on any remaining vendor refund issues. Stay 500 feet from my home, my office, and active job sites. Brianna and Chase were both barred from contacting clients, employees, or contractors connected to my business. Seth followed that with a separate civil demand related to demonstrable business disruption. We did not need a full lawsuit because Brianna's father, apparently exhausted by the family's Olympic-level bad judgment, paid a negotiated settlement through their attorney. $12,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to cover the private investigator, legal fees, security upgrades, and the week of nonsense they'd cost my office. That was the part people kept calling revenge. It wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been me posting every screenshot online. Revenge would have been sending Chase a calculator and a list of entry-level jobs. Revenge would have been forwarding Brianna's compensation request to every person who called me heartless. I didn't do any of that. I just made them pay for what they broke. That's not revenge. That's billing. 3 months later, life is quiet in a way I didn't know I needed. The house feels like mine again. The office is stronger than before. That HOA contract turned into 2 more. Denise still tells the lobby dress story whenever somebody starts complaining. Marcus wants "We can make your business hurt" printed on a cruise shirt, which I keep vetoing because I'm allegedly the adult here. Callie says calling off the wedding was the first romantic thing I've ever done for myself. She's not wrong. The strangest part is that Brianna's father called once after everything was finalized, not to patch things up, just to apologize. He said, "I should have stopped that dinner sooner." I told him the truth. If you had, it would have happened later. Better it happened where everyone could hear it. And that's the lesson. The person who tries to use love as leverage is already telling you what the future costs. Listen the first time. Don't negotiate with entitlement. Don't confuse public pressure with private truth. And don't call it revenge when a calm person finally sends the invoice for chaos.